You know, he realized something profound. The only way to defeat the most terrifying, just bone-crushing disease of the 20th century, well, it wasn't about winning the most awards. It wasn't about becoming the richest man in America. No, it was about becoming so completely obsessed with serving humanity that his life's work, it just couldn't belong to him anymore. This one single idea, this would change the entire course of modern medicine. It would redefine the very idea of a scientist's legacy. And it's really the core of what we're talking about today. The Salk Approach. It's a kind of code for greatness that's built not on ego, but on this radical, intense focus on what is truly useful for all of us. But before we get to the victory, you have to understand the terror. I want you to just imagine entire hospital wards filled with the constant, humming sound of mechanical breathing. Children encased in these giant metal cylinders because their own paralyzed bodies couldn't draw breath. That was the reality of polio. It was the shadow that fell over every summer, every single swimming pool, every playground. This was a disease that didn't just cripple bodies, it absolutely crushed the spirit of a nation. And it was into this world of fear that Jonas Salk stepped. To fight a monster like polio, Salk knew he needed a totally different kind of power. Not the power you get from prestige or some fancy title, but the power that comes from absolute, unshakable conviction. And that conviction, well, it would be forged in a single defining moment. Okay, so picture this. It's 1953. Salk is in his Pittsburgh laboratory. He's holding a needle filled with his experimental killed virus vaccine. Now, you have to understand, the scientific establishment was fiercely divided. Almost everyone believed only a live virus vaccine could possibly work. Salk's theory that a killed virus could give you immunity without the risk was basically seen as heresy. The rulebook, all the conventional wisdom, it demanded that the next step had to be a slow, cautious animal trial. But Salk knew that time was the one thing those children in the iron lungs didn't have. He needed to prove its safety with an authority that no peer review committee could ever question. So he made a choice. He pulled up his own sleeve and he injected himself. Then he inoculated his wife. And then he gave the vaccine to his own children. Now, look, this wasn't some kind of stunt. This was a declaration. It was the ultimate act of belief in his own data, a profound statement that his real responsibility wasn't to his career, but to the families he was trying to save. He was looking for an answer, and he was willing to bet his own family on the data he had so painstakingly gathered. And that act? It perfectly illustrates the core principle that drove him: utility logic. See, while all the so-called experts of the day were busy trying to look brilliant, publishing theories just to impress each other, Salk was playing a totally different game. He was solving for humanity. Think about it like an engineer building a bridge. Their goal isn't some elegant or academically interesting bridge, right? The goal is a bridge that doesn't fall down. That's utility logic. It's the coder who writes clean, functional code, not just flashy stuff. Salk got it. He understood that the real authority isn't being an insider who just follows the rules. It's being the person who knows exactly why those rules need to be broken for the sake of a useful outcome. So where did this radical, utility-driven mindset even come from? Well, it wasn't born in the halls of some Ivy League university. It was forged in the fires of his own experience as a total outsider. Before he was the man who saved the children, Jonas was the son of an immigrant garment worker, a Jewish kid from East Harlem, fighting for his intellectual sovereignty in a world full of quotas and snobbery. He saw firsthand how the authority of the elite universities was often just a shield, really, a way for insiders to protect their status and cover up their fear of new ideas and, frankly, new people. In this experience, it gave him an incredible gift, a healthy skepticism of the establishment, and this deep-seated belief that truth wasn't determined by your pedigree, but by your data. And this really highlights the two different paths a researcher could take back then. On one side, you have the standard academic. And what's their goal? To be academic enough, right? To win social approval, to wait patiently for peer review. Salk saw that path, and he just completely rejected it. He took a job at the unprestigious University of Pittsburgh, choosing a basement lab over Ivy League approval. His goal wasn't to be impressive, it was to be useful, period. While everyone else was chasing tenure, he was chasing a solution. Those decades in Pittsburgh, what they called the slog years with basically no recognition, they weren't a setback for him. They were his forge. The isolation actually forced him to unlearn the habit of looking for social approval. Instead, he learned to trust one thing and one thing only: his own sovereign data. We're talking 16-hour days proving his theories to himself, not to some committee. He was building an internal fortress of utility logic, brick by brick, experiment by experiment. He didn't need a Harvard title to protect him. His confidence came from the work itself. And all of this personal history, it built into a guiding philosophy. The friction he faced in his early career actually created a mindset that would change the world, because he started thinking on a completely different scale. This is the first piece of it: evolutionary stewardship. Salk saw his work as serving the long-term evolution of humanity. He wasn't just curing a disease for the moment. He was trying to remove an obstacle to human progress itself. And with that perspective, he realized a pretty profound truth. Every time you try to brand a solution to make yourself look powerful, you actually lose your power. The focus shifts from the problem to your own image. So he started operating under a new, unbreakable rule. The patient is the only metric that matters. Period. And that leads to an even deeper principle: biological stewardship. Now, this isn't just some feel-good idea. It is a cold, hard strategy. It's the discipline to stay in the lab, to run one more test, to check one more time, until the safety is absolutely undeniable. And why? Because you understand that your work isn't just about publishing a paper. It's about the life it can provide for the entire human race. You're not just solving a puzzle. You are a steward for the biological future of our species. This quote, this just illustrates perfectly how Salk put that philosophy into practice. His mind wasn't some stage for intellectual performance. No way. It was a high-performance laboratory, a place for systematic, rigorous, ego-free testing to find not just an interesting idea, but the truth. And this belief, it didn't just stay theoretical. It became his daily system. So how do you turn a grand philosophy like solving for the species into a daily operating system, right? How do you make it real and tangible? Well, Salk did it through a set of rigorous, repeatable rituals. This was his utility protocol. First, he would run the patent audit. This was a constant mental check to make sure his pursuit of truth stayed sovereign, that it wasn't being tainted by a desire for ownership or money or fame. Second, he would train through toil. He used his deep technical knowledge not to show off, but as a weapon to dismantle the noise and the outdated dogma of the academic establishment. He knew his data so completely that no argument from authority could shake him. And third, he practiced let the cure speak. He refused that proprietary single-story path. His goal wasn't to own some secret formula, but to create a result so powerful it would force a new reality into being for everyone. This was foundational altruism in action. And these daily rituals, this unwavering commitment to utility, well, they led directly to the single greatest public health achievement of the 20th century. The system produced a result that literally transformed the modern world. So the payoff arrived with the Francis Field trials in 1954. This was it, the ultimate test of Salk's killed virus theory and his entire outsider approach. The whole world was watching. Decades of work in that Pittsburgh basement, the self-testing, all the skepticism from the establishment, it all came down to this moment. It would be the largest, most ambitious medical experiment in the history of humankind. The hopes of a nation rested on the outcome. The scale of this thing was just staggering, a logistical masterpiece. It started with a network of over 20,000 doctors and public health officials, all mobilized for this one purpose, creating this web of trust and expertise that stretched across the entire country. And they were supported by an army of 220,000 volunteers. Can you just imagine that? Parents, teachers, community leaders, all working together, organizing clinics in school gyms and community centers, just driven by this collective hope of ending the terror of polio. And at the very heart of it all were the participants, 1.8 million children. An unprecedented number of families placed their trust in this man from the basement lab in Pittsburgh and his radical idea. The risk was enormous, but you know what? The hope was even greater. On April 12, 1955, the results were announced. The vaccine was safe and effective. Church bells started ringing across the country. People were literally weeping in the streets. It was this moment of collective, unbridled joy. And later, when a journalist asked Salk who owned the patent, he gave this simple, world-changing reply. With that one question, he completely redefined legacy. It wasn't about profit. It wasn't about ownership. It was about pure, unvarnished stewardship for all humanity. You see, Salk's story is so much more than just history. It's a guide. It's a playbook for anyone out there who feels like an outsider, for anyone who wants their work to truly matter. It gives us a way to turn his story into your own operating system. And this is the core takeaway. For so many of us, the goal is to be seen, to be recognized, right? To be the hero of our own story. But Salk teaches us that true power lies somewhere else entirely. It's found when you stop trying to be the hero and you start dedicating yourself to being the answer to a problem that actually matters. Your real power is directly tied to your selfless contribution. So I want you to think about this for yourself. Where is your basement lab? What is that task, that project, that area of your life that you've just been accepting as routine? What would happen if you committed to it with the same depth as Salk, if you committed so deeply to solving the problem that you actually found the cure? Because when you raise your level of stewardship, you stop being a victim of your own ego and you become the master of the outcome. Credit is a choice, fame is fleeting, but utility is forever. The truth is in the utility, and your altruism, that is the code for your greatness.